just coming into this, I don't want to say new version of myself, but this more empowered, confident version of myself. Because for so many years, I did use alcohol as a coping mechanism and also as that liquid courage. It was a really big thing for me in social settings. I was very insecure and disconnected from myself for most of my life because I relied so heavily on alcohol. And so when I got sober and when I stopped drinking, I really had to relearn, okay, what makes me me? What do I enjoy? What are my values? And also, how do I want to show up in the world?
Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion. Learn the truth behind the alcohol myths and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Well, today you're going to meet my very special guest, Sophia Graniela, and I wanted to give you just a little bit of her background because she really has such a unique take on how to support women in this alcohol-free journey. Sophia Graniela is a woman's EFT tapping and emotional healing mentor who helps women come home to themselves beyond the conditioning, beyond the shoulds, and beyond the versions of themselves built for survival. After choosing to walk an alcohol-free path and dismantle the performative life she once lived, Sophia's healing journey became a reclamation of self-trust, self-expression, and soul-aligned aliveness. Through a blend of EFT tapping, adventure, and self-discovery, she guides free spirit, ambitious women in breaking cycles, regulating their nervous system, and creating lives that feel like truth, not performance. She's the founder of Her Journey Home, a space for women ready to rewrite the rules and build a relationship with themselves that's rooted in safety, softness, and deep inner power. You can connect with Sophia at herjourneyhome.com and, herjourneyhomeco.com. And you can connect with her on Instagram at Sophia Graniela, her podcast, Her Journey Home. So I hope you will check out her work and connect and enjoy this episode. Well, hey everyone, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast. And I have a beautiful human joining me today. I am delighted to make the acquaintance of and introduce you to Sophia Graniela from Her Journey Home. And we are excited. We just touched base about all the cool things we're going to talk about today. So, Sophia, welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, Terry, thank you so much for having me. I feel so honored to be on the episode with you today.
Yes, and Sophia and I were touching base, and I realized that today, in real time, as I'm recording this, it is exactly 6 years since I became certified as a This Naked Mind Institute coach. And I have been doing the podcast now coming up on 3 years. And so it's kind of incredible how this journey's evolved for me. And Sophia, I cannot wait to hear how the dots were connected when you decided to, explore and then shift your relationship around alcohol and what transpired next. So first, tell us, kind of that initial realization that maybe alcohol wasn't serving you. Can you take us back to that time?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Where do I even begin? So I started drinking honestly when I was 15 years old. I grew up in a really small town in upstate New York. And from a young age, I felt like I needed to fit in and feel that sense of belonging and acceptance. And there was a lot of bullying that went on. And so I started to just abandon everything that I really love. And I started drinking and partying. And for 15 years of my life, I was in and out of these really toxic cycles with alcohol. And it really dawned on me, there were a couple of times in college where I ended up in the hospital from over drinking. A couple of times I ended up getting arrested from drinking and just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I never really looked at alcohol as a bad thing then because, of course, I was in college, I was having fun, and it was honestly my identity at that point. I didn't have any hobbies outside of drinking and partying. And so it was really scary for me to even imagine a world without alcohol. And so finally, when I hit 29 years old, I'll be 32 next year. I remember just looking in the mirror and I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. I had gotten out of a relationship. I was extremely heartbroken. I was in almost $25,000 of credit card debt. And I just was so unhealthy. I had lost a lot of weight from going out and going crazy on the weekends and then just not really nourishing my body. And I just didn't know who I was anymore. I had lost touch with my values, my passions, my hobbies, the things that make Sophia Sophia. And it was really in that moment that I started to question the role that alcohol played in my life. And it wasn't in that moment that I decided to give it up, but it was in that moment that I said, okay, I can't continue living this way. I have to start taking control of my own life. I was the reason for my own suffering at that point, and I knew at that time that I couldn't continue living another day feeling like a shell of myself, feeling unfulfilled, feeling like, is life always going to be this way? Waking up hungover, starting drinking on Thursday, going crazy all weekend, getting to Monday, and just being like, is this going to be forever? And so after that moment, I remember really starting to take control of my health. I started to work out, prioritizing the way that I ate, the way that I moved my body, really starting to reevaluate a lot of friendships and relationships in my life. And I just started getting really curious about, okay, what is it that I actually want my life to look and feel like? What do I want to start doing that's going to bring me joy and happiness and fulfillment? And so for about 6 months from February to October, I stopped going out a lot. I started setting boundaries. I started to really reinvent myself and shift my identity. And then in October of 2023, I just had a moment at a music festival. I overdrank and I had almost an out of body experience. I could see my highest self looking down on me in that moment. And I had felt really out of control, chaotic. I started getting angry. I lost my keys. And it was just in that moment, I remember looking over at my friend and I said, this is the last night I'm going to drink alcohol. Because in that very moment, I could hear that little voice in my head saying, Sophia, you have so much potential. You are meant to create such a beautiful, vibrant life. And this is only holding you back. And so it was really in that moment that something just clicked in me, and I just knew that it could no longer come with me on the journey, and there was just no going back at that point. So now I'm a year and 8 months sober, and oh my gosh, everything has changed.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and, it's very vulnerable to talk about some of those darker places, so I wanna honor that, and, you said a couple things that I think are so key, and they really are universal, even though I didn't stop drinking, Sophia, until I was 55. So I'm coming up this year will be 10 years for me. So I'm excited about that. And, what you talked about abandoning yourself. You know, uh, I also, and I think it's true for all of us, I also had an identity crisis, but I was also someone who was a mom, I was in a committed marriage. And so, I was at a different stage of life than you, but I really believe firmly that those core places where we lose sight of the person we used to be and the person that we can become, I believe that that's true for everyone. And this is why, in my heart of hearts, I think that when we stop drinking alcohol, everything shifts. And when I say everything, my audience knows, and for you, it might look wildly different. But for me, on the outside, things didn't really change, at least initially. I had the same husband. I still was a mom. I still went to the same job. I still had the same friends. I lived in the same place. But on the inside, everything started changing. And from that beautiful place, even though it was hard, even though it was hard in the beginning, it opened up so much possibility. And, I think it's so interesting and fascinating and sometimes challenging that you can't really know. We can talk about it, you and we can get excited about it. I heard the passion in your voice. I think you can hear the passion in mine. But until we experience it, it's kind of surreal and sort of intangible. So, yeah, so I just think it's, what you talked about with recognizing that alcohol could no longer come on the journey with you is just such a cool way to talk about it because it is this beautiful empowered choice. Whether our drinking was more of the gray area drinking or whether we had darker times, we all have a choice. What is the role we want alcohol to play? And in my case, it just became none. Like none. What am I doing here? I don't have to, I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want to play small.
Oh my gosh, I resonate so deeply with everything that you said. And I think another thing that I always like to say is you don't have to hit rock bottom and you don't have to have, a horrible, horrible relationship with alcohol to decide, you know what, this no longer serves me. Because I was more of what you would consider a gray area drinker. There was lots of times where I wasn't drinking, but on times that I did drink, sometimes I would go overboard and I would end up in terrible situations, especially in college. But at the end of my 20s, it was much more of like a couple of glasses of wine here and there, but it was still holding me back. I didn't like the way that I felt. I didn't like the way that I would show up in certain situations and conversations. It affected my relationships. And so at the end of the day, I love that you said it's an empowered choice because that's exactly what it is. You get to decide, okay, this no longer gets to come with me because I know that I'm meant for more.
Yeah, and you have experienced a lot of new ways that Sophia is showing up in the world since alcohol moved out. So, tell us what you're most passionate about right now.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the 2 things that really stick out in my mind, number 1 is travel and adventure. And the reason why I'm so passionate about travel and adventure is because I used to use travel as a means of escaping, and drinking was a really big piece of travel for me. So I would go somewhere and it would always be wrapped around where's the next bar? Where's the next happy hour? And I would meet people through drinking. That was where a lot of my social connection would come from. And now that I travel sober, it has opened up such a world of possibility. I'm so much more present and connected, and I travel now with so much more intention. And so now when I go somewhere, it's really me soaking up the culture and waking up early to catch the sunrise and doing my meditations and my EFT tapping and really just enjoying the present moment versus constantly needing to chase something else outside of myself. And so travel for me has really connected me so much deeper to myself, to my values, being able to explore the world, overcome challenges. And I always recommend when someone's sober to go on a solo adventure because it is truly one of the best ways to come home to yourself, which is why my company name is called Her Journey Home. So that's one of my biggest passions. I've been to over 25 countries, so highly recommend that. The second thing is EFT tapping, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And the reason I'm so passionate about this modality is because it really blends cognitive therapy with somatic therapy. So, cognitive is the mind, the patterns, the thinking, and then the somatics is processing through the body. And so, it's such a gentle but very powerful, effective modality to rewire the subconscious beliefs and also help to regulate the nervous system and expand the capacity to hold more. And so it's been a really beautiful tool that I've used on my journey of being alcohol free and also just coming into this, I don't want to say new version of myself, but this more empowered, confident version of myself. Because for so many years, I did use alcohol as a coping mechanism and also as that liquid courage. It was a really big thing for me in social settings. I was very insecure and disconnected from myself for most of my life because I relied so heavily on alcohol. And so when I got sober and when I stopped drinking, I really had to relearn okay, what makes me me? What do I enjoy? What are my values? And also, how do I want to show up in the world? And so EFT has been such a beautiful way of really helping me step into my power and be able to create the life that I've now created and attract incredible friendships and relationships and start my business and my podcast and just really actually start to achieve my goals. Because before with drinking, I'm sure you can also resonate with this. It honestly kind of took priority in my life. That was really what I focused on. Everything in my life revolved around the drinking. And so when I removed that, I realized, wow, I have so much more time to now prioritize my mind, body, and soul. And you just get to create something so, so magical.
Yes, I was very much on that same journey. So I had so much time and energy. I was like crawling out of my skin. It was like, what am I going to do now? So I went to nutrition school and I started exploring, just different ways to connect with myself because I think exactly what you're saying. I think many of my listeners will understand or they recognize that place of feeling disconnected from our body and our soul and our heart. And I'll say our purpose because, alcohol to me, what I always talk about is how it dials down our vibration, it dials down our intuition. And boy, that comes roaring back. And sometimes in ways that are like, whoa, what is going on here? And I have used EFT as a way to, connect more with the deeper parts of who I am. And you say I'm not someone new, but I like to think of it as becoming and unbecoming. So we're like getting back to who we used to be, but we're also evolving into this new version of us. And, for me, emotional freedom technique was a place to start to explore that somatic piece, and I'm going to do some more. I'm doing a certification in nervous system regulation this fall that I'm really excited about because I say this a lot, but one of the things that I recognize, and maybe not even until the last couple of years, that I was walking around like a head, totally disconnected from my body for so long. And I know that wasn't 100% true because, I had children and I had moments where I was definitely felt, connected to my body. But I wasn't aware that there was more than just thinking my way through things, that I could feel my way through things, and that I could recognize the way that my body was responding to situations. It was sending me messages. Like, I don't know how I missed all that, but for a long time, that's where I lived. And then the somatic piece has been really powerful for me and recognizing that, oh, there's a whole nother way to untangle some of these things that are happening, some of these patterns, some of my emotions. So tell us more about how you discovered EFT and what you're doing with this in your own practice and how you help other women with this part of their journey.
Yeah, definitely. And something that you said too, it's beautiful to have the somatic piece of it because there's this saying, your body whispers before it screams. And that saying always stood out to me because my body was always whispering to me my entire time, my entire life, right? But I was just ignoring it. And it kept getting louder and louder until finally at, like I said, 29, everything shifted and I had my first major spiritual awakening. But it's pretty interesting too, because I learned about EFT 2.5 years ago, and I actually learned about it at an ayahuasca ceremony. So I had went to do some plant medicine because I was at a point in my journey where I knew that I was ready to really dig up and kind of excavate some things from childhood because I didn't have a lot of memories that I could access. And so at the ceremony, there was actually an EFT practitioner. And so he was teaching us all about it and he was showing us all the points. And at that time in my journey, because I was still pretty disconnected from myself, I thought to myself, how on earth does this work by tapping on points of the body? It just didn't fully click for me because I didn't really understand the science behind it. But about 6 months later, I was like, okay, I'm really interested in this. I want to dive deeper into EFT. I want to change my life and then also help other women really claim their truth and come home to the most authentic version of themselves. And so I started to use EFT in my own life because I felt like I wasn't fully showing up for myself the way I knew that I could. There was still a lot of self doubt. There was still a lot of that inner critic coming up. There was still a lot of old stories that I kept replaying over and over again, like, you're not good enough and you're not worthy of this success. And I know that a lot of women and people in general have these conditionings from childhood. And so EFT has been such a beautiful modality on my journey that I keep in my back pocket anytime I feel like I need a boost, if I feel like I'm going through any frustration, if I have any anxiety, if I just need to rewire one of those pesky limiting beliefs that keeps popping up for me. And it's also been really amazing because for so many years of my life, as we said, we were so disconnected. And I like to say I was living life on autopilot. I felt like I was just performing everything. I was just checking the boxes, following the shoulds of society, all of those external expectations, right? All the noise out there of the path that we're supposed to follow. And it never quite felt right, and I would always just smile through and say, "You know what? I'm happy, everything's fine." But deep down, there was a major disconnect, and I was not fulfilled at all, and so EFT is a beautiful modality to bring you back into your body, and I had done so much mindset work. I was always doing positive affirmations and journaling and reframing and all of that, and mindset work is so important. Do not get me wrong, it's necessary in anyone's journey, but I was really missing that connection to my own body. And so being able to really start to process emotions through my body and feel everything that's coming through, the sadness, the anger, the pain, I always like to say life is all about duality. And so I think a lot of times when we're healing, we think that everything's going to be rainbows and butterflies and we won't be triggered and we won't have moments when we're sad, but it's actually the opposite of that. It's being able to expand your capacity to hold more of all of the emotions. So nervous system regulation I think has become such a big buzzword online. Oh, just regulate your nervous system, but no one really talks about the fact that it's really about expanding your capacity. It's like a rubber band stretching. You want to be able to still hold the sadness and the pain and the grief, and then be able to experience the happiness and the joy and the abundance. And so EFT has just been that modality for me that has been able to really connect me with my body as well as my clients. I've seen so many women come to me just feeling like scared to use their voice, scared to express themselves. What if I'm judged? What if I'm misunderstood? Because they've spent so much of their life suppressing how they really feel. And that was me too, really just abandoning my truth and not sharing what I deeply desired to share. And so EFT has really just helped me and these women build so much unshakable confidence and really just come back to our truth.
Mm. I take notes because my brain, I wanna go back to some things that you said, and, I'm scribbling as you're writing because it's helping me process this. But what you said there that is really, so beautiful is this idea of holding more, because you're exactly right. You know, many people come into this sober curious journey thinking that if I let go of alcohol, all the chaos that alcohol has created, kind of the peripheral things, all that's going to go away. And that might be true and often is. However, exactly what you said there, what we are noticing is that, oh my goodness, the emotions are now top level. And they are for me, it was very much a roller coaster. Things were coming up and I was expressing anger and even rage for the first time. And, I had this beautiful conversation with a group of women that I coach who are somewhere between 90 days and 365 days alcohol free. And we were talking about you are always enough and never too much. And that phrase has been such a gift to me because, I think that I lived with the idea for a long time that I was too much. I'm high energy. I'm excited. I'm an extrovert. I love to connect. And so that sometimes is a lot for people. But what I had to discover was it's not too much for me. It's not, the right people. I don't have to be the right version of Terry for other people. And, without alcohol, we find our voice, but we also have to recognize that these big emotions, we have to, like you said, build capacity to hold them. And we were having this beautiful conversation yesterday about this. And someone said, well, how do I learn to, now I recognize more things and I have some tools to honor what's coming up and, support my body and get the message from my body and work through these things. But, you know, am I supposed to suppress them? Am I supposed to be like, don't be in fawn, don't be in flight? And it's like, no, no. In fact, now have the opportunity to do is bring awareness, recognize the message that's coming up, and allow our body to help us process and break some of these old patterns. And so I think sometimes our message gets mixed up, and particularly as women, like change for the better, but this is the version of better. And it's like, no, 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 no. There's no one version of better. This is a self discovery journey. And along the way, it gets a little messy.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. You said so many things that I just want to highlight. But the one thing is I so relate to the too muchness. For most of my life, I was told you're too intense, you're too much, you're too emotional. And for so many years, I shamed myself. And I think that's another reason why alcohol played such a big role in my life is because it was a way for me to almost just dim down that too muchness. Or if it came out, it's fine. I'm just drunk and it's no big deal. And oh my gosh, I love the saying, you're enough and never too much. Like that is just such a gorgeous statement because I just I wish more women knew that you are never too much for the right people. Like the right people will celebrate and support you in all of your uniqueness and all your magic. And it's a beautiful thing to have energy and to be passionate about things, and that's just who I am, and so now it's like we get to celebrate that, and also on this journey, like you said, it can be messy, it can be uncomfortable, there's going to be moments of uncertainty and lack of clarity, but it's really getting to a place where you can hold yourself through everything that comes up. And so that's what's so beautiful about EFT is really when you expand your capacity, it's increasing your window of tolerance and being able to really, okay, I feel stressed and overwhelmed, but allowing you to be able to not escape and not run away and not you're really learning to just sit with it and learn to hold it and be okay with that.
Yeah, I talk about this because I think there is this assumption that in the beginning, when we're not using alcohol, and some people, the cravings for some can be intense. And there's a time where distraction can be a great tool. But there comes a time when we have to honor that we don't want to just escape and create new escape routes. We actually want to sit through the more challenging parts so that we do build that resilience, that we're not abandoning ourselves in a different way. And so there is this beautiful tension that happens. And if you're working with a coach or you're in a group, it's a beautiful time to allow yourself to explore sitting in these challenging emotions. And then maybe not for very long in the beginning, but I think for everyone there comes a time where it's they're ready. And I always invite the people I work with, don't wait too long. Distraction is really important, so that you're not reaching for alcohol. But we can often handle more. And we sometimes underestimate how strong we really are with the right tools and the right support. And so I love the idea that tapping can be part of how we build more capacity, practice, raise our vibration, raise our awareness of what we can handle. And yeah, I need to do more tapping. It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful, and the thing I really love about it is you don't need to necessarily be in a safe space, you don't have to have your eyes closed like you would, let's say, a meditation or breath work. And so you can literally do a tapping in the back of an Uber, you can do it at the airport. It's just one of those perfect modalities that you can put in your back pocket anytime, anywhere. So yes, it's amazing.
Yeah, I teach all my clients the butterfly what I call butterfly tapping, and I don't know, Sophia, I thought I made it up, but somewhere along the way, somebody entered into my consciousness and I started sharing it in a way that I thought was unique. And literally the other day, somebody was like, and the butterfly, I'm like, darn, I thought that was me. But I actually taught someone it in the airport because she was so nervous going through the security line, and she was just like all over the map with her emotions, and her voice was high pitched, and she was telling all her friends. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I understand, can I share something with you?" And then she came up to me later and she's like, "It's working." And I was like, "Try this. Go slower." And she just sighed. And what I notice most people when we do this together, mostly in groups, I hear this collective psychological sigh, right? That, and those are the things that we have the opportunity when alcohol is out of the way to start noticing of how our body wants to show up in the world. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to be in high vibration and excited, and that's all good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we do have a way to honor the ebb and flow of what we're processing day in and day out. And sometimes those are those big emotions.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I love that so much. It's always the best when you can feel someone's energy shifts in real time and they let out that little sigh or a yawn. It's like, oh, it's the best.
Yeah. So when you work with women, tell us more what that looks like, Sophia.
Yeah, absolutely. So normally it's a one-to-one. I haven't done groups just yet. I really like to get to the root of whatever is coming up for them. And so with EFT tapping, it's really beautiful because the more specific you can get, the better the results, I like to say. And so essentially, how an EFT tapping session goes is the number one thing we do is we identify the limiting belief, the fear, whatever's coming up, and then we go into the somatic place. So we actually locate the limiting belief and then connect it to the sensation in the body. And so once they connect to that, we then go ahead and have them rate themselves on a scale of 1 through 10 using a SUD rating, which is subjective units of distress. And so essentially, that just gives us a really good starting place so that when we go through the EFT tapping session, we can see how their energy shifts after a couple of rounds. And so we basically will go through the meridian points, which I can go through those as well. It's in between the eyebrows, side of the eyes, underneath the eyes, underneath the nose, on the chin, under the collarbones, underneath the arm, and on top of the head. And so the meridians are also known as the tapping or the acupressure points. And I honestly like to think about EFT as acupuncture, but without the needles, because it stems back to ancient Chinese medicine. And so within a 60-minute session, we're essentially moving the energy through the body, focusing specifically on the goal that the client has, on that limiting belief, on that fear. And we're essentially first focusing on the negative, which is also why EFT is so powerful because we're accepting and acknowledging that that negative belief is there or that fear is there. And the reason we do that, I like to think if you're looking at a kitchen floor and there's a bunch of dirt, you can't just immediately go and mop the floor. You have to first vacuum and clear the space. And so that's what we do when we tap on the negative. We're essentially allowing it to come to the surface, saying, okay, this is present, but I deeply and completely love myself anyways. And then once we clear the negative, we then anchor in the positive affirmations or the new beliefs, the new things that the client really wants to anchor in. And so essentially in my client sessions, a lot of times we're working on helping them use their voice, helping them to express themselves, helping them to move through any fear of judgment or misunderstanding. We really help with a lot of limiting beliefs that come from childhood. Again, the I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. Who am I to share my voice? Who am I to start this business? Who am I to have this success that I really desire? And so the 60-minute sessions are really beautiful and potent. And then I also work with clients on a longer term 90-day basis because it's really my belief that yes, you can have a lot of transformation in 60 minutes, but in order to really see transformation and really have sustainable transformation, I like to say, and a good roadmap of how to continue forward, 90 days is the minimum amount for me to really be able to help you start to create the path forward and the life that you desire and have the tools and the resources to then be out on your own to create the transformation. Because I really want to empower my clients to be able to go out into the real world and take on the things that they want to do without constantly needing me in their back pocket. So the 90 days is a really beautiful way to do that.
Yeah, I agree, and that's typically when I work with one-on-one clients, you know. So I'm curious, do you work with women on their journey to let go of alcohol? Because I could see where EFT could be really powerful, like even the limiting belief of, no one will accept me or I won't be able to show up the same. I had all those limiting beliefs. I thought I will be boring and everybody around me will be boring. I thought I'll never have fun again. I thought, I just thought I was going to be miserable. And, 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of people out there like there are now talking about the wild and beautiful transformations. And so I was kind of like winging it. And I think that I had heard of EFT I wanna say before my journey, but, 10 years is looking back at to a bit of time, so I'm trying to think of when I first, was introduced to it, but it was so funny, Sophia, I knew that there was something about it that I loved, but I was afraid it was so woo and so weird that, "Nah, I can't really do that thing," like, "Yeah, that's attractive, but no way, that's weird."
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. So I do support women in terms of being alcohol free and living a better lifestyle. It's actually interesting you asked because in the very beginning of my journey, I was focusing solely on being an alcohol free coach. And then what I realized through my own evolution and my own journey is that being alcohol free was only the very first step in my evolution. So when I stopped drinking, I thought, okay, everything's going to change. And yes, don't get me wrong, it definitely changed. But then it was the very start of, okay, how do I build confidence? How do I navigate social settings? How do I build a deep sense of self worth? We're all inherently worthy, but how do I really feel that way? Right? How do I start to actually do the things that I want to do in my life and feel like I am strong and powerful? And so as I started to evolve, I realized I absolutely want to help women on their alcohol-free journeys, but it actually goes so much deeper than the just not drinking alcohol. So it's kind of a multifaceted answer. So yes, I definitely help women release alcohol, but then also the second part of that is okay, now that we've released alcohol, how can we really come home to ourselves? Which is really how her journey home was born is it just goes so much deeper into all of the layers back to childhood, all the conditioning, and really, okay, what is it that you desire to create in your life, and how can we start to make that happen?
Mm. Yeah, it's such important work. It's beautiful. That's so cool that you do that. And you mentioned, your love of travel. You mentioned that you were in debt. You mentioned, some toxic relationships. Talk a little bit about this evolution for you, because I love that word evolution. And I really do think that's what I mean when I say becoming and unbecoming. I should just shift my language. No, the becoming and unbecoming, I think, is helpful too. But I love the evolution because I do believe that, alcohol shows up as a tool and it is a self care tool. But as Glennon Doyle says, it's a pretty shitty self care tool. And, so we have this evolution that happens of not only new tools, but just new adventures, experiences. And so lots have shifted for you. And I know certainly for me. So, how has showing up differently affected those areas of your life?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Alcohol was such a big part of my life for so many years. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, it really had become my whole identity. And so when I released alcohol, yes, there were definitely challenges in the beginning. I had to let go and distance myself from a lot of people in my life. But I can confidently say now that every area of my life has shifted for the best. My relationship to myself and connection to myself, my relationships and friendships, my finances, my health was a huge one. I, from a young age, had a very weak immune system. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease when I was about 13 years old. I was an amazing gymnast and I had to stop doing everything just because everything hurt. And so basically, when I was drinking, I was just continuing to weaken my immune system. And so I was getting sick every other weekend and just really feeling like a shell of myself. And so when I stopped drinking and I started to go to the gym and do Pilates and really just start to focus on, okay, how can I nourish my body? I had started to feel so much stronger and so much healthier. And then because of that, I started feeling so much more confident. And I went from really using alcohol, as I mentioned earlier, as liquid courage and a crutch, and almost like you said, a really shitty self care tool. It was a coping mechanism. Anytime I was stressed or overwhelmed with work, I would go out and drink. And it was really a way for me to drown out and numb my emotions. And so for most of my life, because I always felt like I was too much and too emotional, I would drink and then suppress so much sadness and anger and grief. And so when I got sober, it was like so much was coming up to the surface that I had to process. And I would say probably the first 6 months were really difficult because I didn't know how to sit with myself. I didn't know how to sit in my own energy and to just be okay with the sadness. And I felt like, is this normal? Am I being too much? Should I be feeling this way? But with time, it really became such a strength because when you learn to be so comfortable in your own presence, it just becomes such a beautiful just recognition of yourself and a just realizing that you have so much power within you and you don't have to outsource it and you don't have to hide. And like we said before, you're never too much. And so, yeah, every single thing in my life shifted, and you just become so much more aware when it comes to spending and finances and just connecting with yourself. I feel like this has just been the most beautiful journey of self-discovery. And I know you said that earlier, like the rediscovering, but I always say that because it's like, oh my gosh, now I have so much time and energy and mental clarity. How do I want to spend my life? What are my values? What lights my heart and my soul on fire? And yeah, that's really been the evolution for me. And I'm just forever grateful that I listened to that voice that got really loud because so much changed.
Mhm. Yes, and, so I have to reflect on the fact that you at 32, is that right?
Yep, gonna
And
be
me
13.
at 64, uh,
Yep.
we have different experiences in the world of what not drinking means to us, and there is a fascination and deep curiosity for people in my generation to realize that are alcohol-free, to realize that, some of the generations behind us are getting this message and coming to this wellness journey and coming back to themselves and ditching alcohol so much sooner than we did. And so, what are you finding in your circles, your peers, people in their late 20s, early 30s? What do you see from your perspective is shifting in this alcohol centric world?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like people are becoming a lot more conscious about their decisions. I will say that there are still a good amount of people that don't really understand because they just haven't hit that point in their journey yet, or they feel as though they don't have a problem. And so alcohol just remains a part of their life. But I will say that when I got sober and when I stopped drinking, a lot of my friends took interest in the sober curious lifestyle. And so I definitely noticed an uptick in people that are now drinking mocktails and now curious about it and a bit more open-minded, I would say, than they were a couple of years ago. And I would say at first when I gave up alcohol, a lot of people were a little bit judgmental and they didn't quite understand. I would say not as many as I thought would be. There were a lot of people that supported me, but there were still people that were a bit triggered by the decision or didn't understand when I didn't want to go out to the bars anymore. But I will say that I've seen a lot of younger people focusing on their health now, which makes me so, so happy. Like I also will say that I hang out in different places now. And so I'm not really around a lot of people that are drinking on the weekends or going crazy anymore. There are definitely still people that do in my life that I've had to distance myself from. But I would say in the spaces where I spend most of my time, people are focused on nourishing their body. People are focused on waking up and actually taking advantage of their weekends and building deeper connections. I think when you are alcohol free, there's this deeper vulnerability with the people around you. And your friendships and relationships aren't built on the connection of partying and being social. They're built on actual values and actual things that you enjoy doing together that don't involve going out. And so, yeah, I would say that I've definitely seen such a shift just like collectively around the whole sober curious lifestyle, and it makes me really, really happy to see this because as I said very much like earlier in the episode, you don't have to get to rock bottom. You can just know, you know what? I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to wake up hungover. I don't want to have all this mental fog. I want to show up as the best version of me, and it all starts with that decision.
It's so important what you said is that, we have this messaging from the 12-step programs and, not here to vilify 12-step or AA, all roads that lead to people changing their relationship with alcohol, I think more power to you. But the message for a long time was that, you can't hang out with the same people and you're going to lose all your friends and you have to stop going out and doing things. And I think what you said there that's so important is that no, we consciously choose as we are evolving to show up differently, and that attracts a different group of people. And that puts us in places where we could still go to a brewery, and certainly I have, but I don't choose to spend time in those atmospheres because it just is no longer of interest to me. And so it's also part of that empowered choice. We aren't losing anything, we're gaining everything. And it starts with that beautiful self awareness that we have been talking about all along. And I just think that that is such a great message, particularly for the younger generation, because they might see themselves like, well, I'm going to stop drinking for a while, but am I going to stop drinking forever? Like, that's 50 years. And, it is step by step, and also casting a beautiful vision of what is possible and what do we really want. And as I said earlier, I think alcohol gets in the way of our perception of what is possible and what do we really want and what is for us. And once that's out of the way, you know, I just it's fascinating to me, like, why go back? Like, this version is just going to continue to expand and get more exciting. And as somebody who stopped drinking at 55 and then went on the second biggest personal growth journey, which was becoming an entrepreneur, yikes, you know how that goes. Uh,
Yeah.
I just see, like, I'm so ecstatic that I chose to meet this version of me because it was a choice.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And you said something so important too is, why would I go back? And I have so many people in my life that always ask me, Sophia, do you plan on drinking again? Like, what's your plan? And I'm like, why would I? I've gotten to a point in my journey now where I don't have any desire. Sure, there's times where I'm like, oh, like a glass of wine would be nice with the steak, but I just don't do it because I love the life that I've created. I love how I feel. And there's no point in going back to a version of myself that abandoned myself. Like, why would I consciously choose something that I know is not good for me? And so, yeah, it's just, I love that you said that because it's really like, why would I go back?
Yeah, yeah, and, I love that, that whole piece around desire, because when we do this deeper work of why were we drinking? Why was alcohol showing up as our only tool? And how do I develop more tools? And how do I connect more with my body? And how do I recognize these deeper emotions? How do I build that resilience you were talking about? Then we don't have to be afraid of showing up in the world. We don't need an escape route. In fact, I don't know, I can tell from you and I know from me, and hopefully so many people are sparked to just, I'm here for all of it. That's the adventure. I may not travel to 25 countries, Sophia, but I am on an adventure for sure.
Hey, it looks different for everyone, and honestly, this is an adventure. You don't even have to leave your hometown to go on such a beautiful adventure of self-discovery and liberation, honestly.
Yeah, well, I think that's a beautiful place to end, and it's been such a delight to meet you, have this conversation. I'm excited for all of the goodness that's gonna come into your life, and I wanna thank you for the work that you do. It's such important work.
Oh, Terry, thank you so much. This conversation clearly got me so excited. I'm so passionate about all of it and so grateful for this opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Yes, and I will be sharing more of how women can connect with you, discover more about EFT, and perhaps in the future join you on a travel adventure.
Oh, I would love that so much. Thank you again, Terry. This was amazing.
I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.